Good afternoon and welcome to our guide to conflict of interest COI disclosures as part of the Educator Development Program. My name is Jay Rahman. I'm chair of the AUA's Office of Education, and I'm joined today by Dr. Costas Lawless, who is the chair of our COI review work group within the Education Council. Thank you, first and foremost, for volunteering to be an educator on an AUA activity. We hope to show you in this module why the conflict of interest disclosure process is important. To our international volunteers, we understand that this may not be a familiar system for you. If you have any questions about any of the above requirements discussed today, please feel free to reach out to AUA staff. Disclosures are important to the AUA Office of Education as the AUA is accredited by the Accreditation Council for Continuing Medical Education to provide accredited continuing education. As an accredited provider, the AUA must adhere to the ACCME's standards for integrity and independence in accredited continuing education, formerly known as the Standards for Commercial Support. The intent of these standards is to ensure accredited continuing education provided is evidence-based and free of commercial bias. ACCME Standard 3 outlines the process that education providers must follow to collect information about financial relationships held by all individuals in control of educational content, exclude owners and employees of ineligible companies except in specific circumstances, identify which financial relationships are relevant to the content that the individual may control, take appropriate steps to mitigate those relevant relationships, to disclose to learners all relevant relationships. And during this module, Costas will walk through each of these steps in the process.
Thank you, Jay. First, the AUA is required to collect all financial relationships held with ineligible companies over the past 24 months from all individuals that may control content. This includes planners, faculty, and reviewers. Because the AUA uses an organization-wide disclosure system for all volunteers, you must disclose all financial and intellectual relationships that you have held in the previous 24 months with ineligible companies formerly known as commercial interests, with healthcare publications, or with other medical associations. You do not need to disclose your hospital or practice employment status. For the purposes of continuing education, we will only review your relationships with ineligible companies. However, committee positions and other roles within the AUA may review your relationships with healthcare publications and medical associations, so you are asked to include those as well. The ACCME defines an ineligible company as a company whose primary business is producing, marketing, selling, reselling, or distributing healthcare products used by or on patients. This was formerly known as a commercial interest. The examples listed here are just some of the common types of ineligible companies. A sample list of both ACCME ineligible and eligible companies is available in the handouts provided. Please complete your online COI disclosure form immediately upon accepting an invitation to participate in an accredited activity, as there are several steps the AUA must go through after you submit your disclosures. If we do not receive your disclosure in a timely manner, you may be removed or replaced from the program. We ask that you do this prior to each CME activity to ensure the information is current. We will not accept a disclosure as current if it was last confirmed more than 12 months prior to the start date of the activity. What types of relationships must be disclosed? First, health publishing, including service on editorial boards, paid authorships, or contributionships, service as a paid peer reviewer, or any publishing royalty arrangement. As a consultant or an advisor, such as service on research, product development, marketing, advisory boards, or quality assurance or safety monitoring boards related to healthcare products or services. As a meeting participant or lecturer, such as honoraria, reimbursements, or in kind payments received as a faculty member or industry sponsored lecturer. As a scientific study or trial, this includes research as a principal investigator, as well as grant support for scientific studies or trials. And in a leadership position, such as on a board, an officer, a trustee, an editor, or other leadership positions related to healthcare. However, this does not include positions with a commercial interest in which you have direct ownership or receive a salary or wages. We will discuss these roles next. These last four relationships types include those with faculty sometimes, and they find them confusing without reviewing the full definitions of each. The first is intellectual property interest. This includes ownership of any intellectual property interest, such as a patent for healthcare products or services, and or receipt of royalties from such intellectual property interests. Next is an investment in interest, such as in a public company. This includes personal or family ownership of stocks or stock options issued by a publicly traded company. The next is ownership or investment interest in a private company. This includes ownership of stocks, stock options, or other ownership interests in any private entity. If the owner is selected, you will be asked to respond to a follow-up question that will help to determine if this is a relationship considered ownership by the ACCME. And finally, an employee. This includes wages or salaries received from a commercial interest. Employment in a urology practice or in the U.S. military does not need to be disclosed. Even if you have no relationships to disclose, you are required to attest and confirm that you have nothing to disclose. The ACCME considers owners and employees to have unresolvable financial relationships and requires that they be excluded except when they are controlling content that is not related to the business lines or products of their company, when the content is limited to basic science research and does not make care recommendations, and when they are participating as technicians to teach safe and proper use of devices. The ACCME defines employees as individuals hired to work for another person or business, which is the employer, for compensation and who are subject to the employer's direction as to the details of how to perform the job. The ACCME defines owners as individuals who have an ownership interest in a company, except for stockholders of publicly traded companies or holders of shares through a pension or mutual fund. The ACCME does not have a minimum financial threshold for determining ownership or employment. However, the ACCME does not consider unexercised stock options to be ownership, but they must be disclosed. If you are an owner or employee and do not believe you meet one of the exceptions discussed, please decline the invitation. This will allow staff to quickly locate a replacement. If you believe you meet an exception, please respond to the staff that invited you to let them know, and they will submit a request to the COI review work group to determine if the situation meets one of the three exceptions. Once all owners and employees have been identified and addressed, all other financial relationships must still be reviewed to identify which ones are relevant to the specific education activity. The ACCME states that a relationship is relevant when the content under the individual's control is related to any of the business lines or products of the company. AUA staff working with the COI review work group reviews each relationship that you hold with an ineligible company to determine if it is potentially relevant to the content you are controlling. As we are reviewing a large quantity of disclosures, especially for large events like the annual meeting, we ask that you promptly submit your disclosures. To ensure that no individual with a relevant financial relationship may insert commercial bias into the content, the ACCME requires that a mitigation method that is appropriate to the role of the individual be implemented, and those steps must be documented. The AUA Office of Education, working with the COI review work group, will select an appropriate mechanism from the list shown to mitigate any potential bias. A primary method for mitigating conflicts of interest is peer review. If your presentation is selected for peer review, please submit it by the deadline provided by the AUA staff to allow our COI review work group volunteers adequate time to complete the review and then work with you to make any requested changes. Please know that the COI review work group is only checking for potential bias and to confirm content is free of promotion, such as trade names and logos. They are not editing your content. Lastly, the ACCME requires that all relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies be disclosed to the learners prior to the start of the activity. The intent is to disclose that the learner of any financial relationship that the faculty may have, which could bias their content, before they decide if they want to participate in the activity. Please help us by, number one, completing your AUA COI disclosure form immediately upon accepting an invitation to participate in an accredited activity. This allows the AUA COI review work group time to identify conflicts of interest and implement an appropriate mechanism to mitigate the conflict. Number two, notifying the AUA staff if you are an owner or employee before accepting an invitation to determine if an exception may apply. This ensures that you do not need to be removed from the program after you have already prepared content. Number three, submitting your content for peer review by the deadline provided. It may seem early to you, but please know that these deadlines are determined by several factors, including volume of reviews and/or printing deadlines. We appreciate your adherence to these guidelines and thank you for your time. I will now turn it back over to Jay to conclude this activity.
Thanks, Costas. In conclusion, the AUA's conflict of interest process ensures all accredited education developed by the AUA is free of commercial bias as required by the ACCME. As planners, reviewers, and faculty, you are important to the success of our activities, and your adherence is critical in our ability to continue to offer accredited continuing education. Thank you for your time, and please stay tuned for a brief demo on how to complete your online COI disclosure form.
To begin the process of completing or updating your COI disclosure record, open an internet browser window and navigate to auanet.org/COI. This will bring you to the My AUA login page, where you can log in using your 8-digit AUA ID number or email address and single sign-on password. If you are a new user or currently have no disclosures listed, you will have the choice to add a new disclosure or declare that you have nothing to disclose. You can click the I have nothing to disclose button and your disclosure process is complete for this period. If you are a new user and have disclosures to report, or are a returning user with new disclosures, please click Add New Disclosure to proceed to the next step. The Active tab contains disclosed items within the 24 months and may include future disclosure dates. The Inactive tab provides a historical list of disclosed items between 2 and 5 years old. Content for inactive records may be edited using the Renewal button. New dates must be applied to create an active disclosure item. The inactive disclosure item will be retained as part of the member's historical record. Users must return to the Active tab to confirm their record. Users without historical information in the AUA database will not see the Inactive tab displayed. In the Active tab, users may confirm their record, add a new disclosure, or edit a current disclosure. Returning users will be required to edit current disclosures to provide information on any missing fields prior to confirming their record. To add a new disclosure, click on the Add New Disclosure button. Begin creating the disclosure record by clicking the radio button for self or family to choose whether the relationship applies to you or a family member, then add the name of the company or organization with whom you have a relationship. You may then select the type of company or organization. Please choose the option that most accurately describes the entity. If you choose Other, please be sure to enter a description. Next, you will be asked if the company you entered is a publicly traded company. A publicly traded company is a corporation whose shareholders own part of the company's assets and profits through the free trade of shares on a stock exchange or over-the-counter market. You will be asked, does the company produce, market, sell, resell, or distribute healthcare products used by or on patients? Please answer yes or no. This helps the AUA to determine if the company is a commercial interest, also known by the ACCME as an ineligible company. You will then be asked, has the company initiated the government regulatory approval process for any of its products, or have a pending submission, for example, an investigational new drug or pre-market approval application? Companies that already have a product on the market for use on patients would have gone through this approval process. However, some biomedical startups may not yet have begun the regulatory approval process, so it is especially important in these cases to accurately respond yes or no to this question to help the AUA correctly classify the company. Choose yes or no depending on whether the relationship is financial or not. To learn the definition of financial relationship, click on the circle I icon. Financial relationships are those relationships in which individuals benefit by receiving compensation or other remuneration. Next, you will select the type of relationship you have with the named entity. Again, there are blue circle information icons next to each relationship type that provides definitions, so you can be sure to choose the type that accurately characterizes the relationship. If you indicated that the company is a privately held company, you will not be able to select investment interest as the relationship type and will instead need to choose ownership or investment interest. You will then need to answer a follow-up question to indicate whether the investment is in the form of stock options only. If you indicated that the company is a publicly traded company, you will be able to select investment interest. Please note that passive stock ownership such as mutual funds need not be disclosed. If you are an employee of a company, you should select employee and not leadership position. Employees are individuals hired to work for another person or business for compensation and are subject to the employer's direction as to the details of how to perform the job and have a legal duty to act in the company's best interest. A full description of each relationship type is included in the appendix section of the online COI disclosure program instructions. This is a critical step in the disclosure process, so it is especially important to be as accurate as possible here. Now select the urologic specialty area for the relationship. Remember that you can clarify this selection and any others by adding information in the description field. The description field provides the opportunity to briefly describe the nature of the relationship. This is optional, but we encourage you to add as much descriptive information as you can. It helps us review your disclosures and determine if the relationship is relevant to the activity in which you are participating. You should then provide the start date, the date the relationship began, and the end date if the relationship has come to an end. If the relationship is currently ongoing, please check the current box. To add this new disclosure, click Add Disclosure, after which you will return to the previous page. You may continue to add additional disclosure records. Once all are complete, please click on the Confirm My Record button to submit your disclosures. If you are a returning user with existing disclosure records, these will be displayed to you in a table that lists the specific information for each disclosure. You can click on the plus sign to view the description text you previously provided. The AUA has updated its online disclosure record system. This will require a minor update to existing records entered prior to December 2022. You will be notified on this screen if you have disclosures requiring these updates. To update, please use the Edit button for each disclosure item to provide the additional information requested on the form, highlighted in blue. Once the updates are complete, click the Update Disclosure button to confirm or undo edits if you would like to change your answers. Once confirmed, click the Return button to go back to your disclosure list. While you are on the edit screen, please also carefully review the existing disclosure information and make changes if needed. You can also add a new disclosure record by clicking the button above the disclosure list and then answering the questions provided. When you add a new disclosure record, it will appear in the table in red. You can edit or delete the disclosure if it is in red or draft status. Please note that once you click Confirm My Record, the disclosure cannot be deleted, only edited. The following fields may be edited after confirmation: Company type, Specialty area, Description, End date. All edited records require reconfirmation. Once you have completed your review, and if necessary, edits and/or additions, you must click on the Confirm My Records button, even if you made no changes. Once your record is fully updated and/or confirmed, you will receive a thank you message. The confirmation date of your COI disclosure will be updated to today's date.